Okay.
And we are recording. All right. I'm so sorry, Alan, but you are stuck here with your host, Daniel Crosier, for COFOH Live and Undead. And I'm here with our guest, R. Alan Brooks.
You got all the syllables. Well done.
Yeah. English is my terrible first language. I trip over myself, constantly. Alan, thanks for coming on. You are a wonderful, wonderful writer. One of my favorite, people,
Thanks, man.
in Denver, and one of my favorite, creatives, also here in Denver. But to be fair, you are kind of a universal talent. And,
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So enough stroking you.
Well, I'm broadcasting live from the blurry and dark corner of this basement, and I'm glad to join you. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, for everybody that's going to be watching this, clearly this is not going to be live like how we have it in the title, but due to circumstances beyond everybody's control, we have to physically and socially, well, not socially, but physically distance ourselves in order to combat coronavirus and make sure those that are the most susceptible among us do not get sick. So
right.
So that's why we're doing this. Alan was kind enough to suggest we use Zoom as the platform. So we're investigating that, and bear with us if there's any technical difficulties. The fact that I set this up, that is a good signifier that there will be technical difficulties.
That's good. People know what to expect now.
Yeah, it's like the old program in the VCR. Don't send Dan to do it.
Right.
Do not. But so Alan, can you just give us a little bit of background of who you are? And it's a loaded question. Who you are, where you came from, and what draws you into writing.
Okay. Well, so I was born in Ithaca, New York. My parents met at Cornell, and they were both studying journalism. My father continued on to become a journalist, and then my mother went into finance. So they got married. I was born. They were married for about 10 years, and then I was raised in Atlanta. So I don't remember Ithaca. I left Ithaca when I was like 1.
Yeah.
But so in my childhood, from both of my parents, it was important that I be a reader and that I be engaged with education. So my father, when I was 5, he wanted to get me interested in reading. He introduced me to comic books.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he bought me The Flash, and it was during Barry Allen was on trial for murdering the Reverse Flash.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So that just began a lifelong love of comics. And then when I was like 10 or so, and I said they got divorced when I was like 5. And when I was 10, my mother saw a newspaper advertisement for a comic book convention. She was like, "Do you think you'd be interested in going to that?" And I was. So she dropped me off. And I went with my best friend, who is still one of my best friends. You probably see me wear that Batman ring.
Yeah.
That guy gave me that for being the best man in his wedding.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, and so he and I have been friends since I was 10.
Nice.
But so when I went to that first comic convention, when I started going to conventions, there were like maybe 300 people.
Yeah.
And me and my friend were the only children and the only Black people, which was, it was cool because it was the only time we could talk with people about comics, and everybody was very embracing.
Mm-hmm.
Although back then comics conventions could be so small that they couldn't be their own thing. So it would be like comic book / Star Trek convention.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Which I was also into, but they didn't make any Black Vulcan ears, which is something I say at the beginning of my podcast.
Yeah.
So everybody would be rocking the Vulcan ears, and I'd be like, I want to be a Vulcan. So I was really into comics, and all the way for a lot of my young years, I thought that I was going to draw comics professionally, actually. But then I got waylaid by hip hop and started rapping, and
oh my gosh, yeah, you're multifaceted. Oh,
yeah. So like through my teens and 20s, I was in a whole bunch of battles. I went on a few
nice,
like a small tour, stuff like that, and put out some albums. And that's what I was really focused on for years. And it was good, but I kind of got burned out.
Mm-hmm.
I reached a point where after I was living in Denver, I had a full band that would do maybe 50 shows a year with me.
Wow.
And it wasn't like we were getting rich, but we were definitely paying our rent. And they were always mad, you know, like they just had attitudes. Like, you know, kind of you're getting paid to do the thing that you want to do.
Uh-huh.
I don't understand why you're mad all the time. And it just kind of stressed me out, you know?
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. So after a few years of that, I was like, man, for all of this stress, I could just work a square job and make more money and still have that same amount of stress. So I started an insurance agency. And I think you might remember that period, you know? That doesn't ring a bell. Okay, so.
No, I can't, you know, I can't remember when you and I first met.
I feel like it was
Was
through
it a
Dink.
truck stop?
That sounds likely. Yeah, probably through Dink. I don't know, but yeah. So I was selling insurance,
okay.
and that's actually how I met the guys at Mutiny. I sold them insurance for Mutiny.
Oh,
isn't that
awesome.
funny?
Jim,
Yeah,
Matt.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So, but I wasn't happy with that work.
Sure.
And also, I think with sales, it requires a certain amount of willingness to take advantage of people that I don't have, you know? And so I only did okay financially at it. Then I started working in health insurance specifically. Health insurance, when you're selling it to somebody, they're constantly trying to nickel and dime you, right? They're like, hey, can I take this off? Can I take this off? Can I take this off? And you're like, yeah, if you do, you're not going to have X when something happens, right?
Right.
And they'd be like, fine, I'm fine with that. And then something would happen, and then they would be mad at me. And even though fundamentally I knew it was their fault, emotionally it was hard for me to have people angry with me for something that I don't give a damn about, which is insurance. I don't give a damn about insurance.
Yeah.
You know, like you're gonna be mad at me about like my social justice stance or political beliefs or even spiritual beliefs, whatever that, you know, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Are you mad at me about insurance? That was just hard for me.
Yeah.
So I guess in my last year of insurance, there was a guy who had a comic. Oh, okay. And I guess, okay, I left out maybe 2010, I joined Denver Drink and Draw. It was right after breakup. And someone was like, hey, you know, they told me there's this group of comic book artists, they get together and they just draw. And I was like, really? And I hadn't drawn since I was like 14.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I started hanging out at Drink and Draw, and that's how I got to know Charlie and Lonnie, Ted and Torcio. So all these people, and I guess I'm saying names that not everybody knows. So Charlie LaGreca, who started Dink and another big convention. And then Ted and Torcio, who has Tinto Press now. He's a publisher. Just all of these guys. Kevin Caron, who's working with me on Anguish Gardens. All of these folks.
Yeah.
And I would just go and doodle. I had no like agenda. It was just nice to do something creative that didn't not involve me having to hustle, you know? And so I went to Drink and Draw for years. But then fast forwarding to the last year of my insurance, I did that for maybe 4 years. I did it for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So fast forward to the end of that, there was a guy who was working on a comic that he needed somebody to write. And he had somebody else drawing. And I'm not going to say who it is because it ended poorly. So,
no worries.
Yeah. So He was like, hey, would you be interested in writing this? And I was like, sure, tell me what the idea is. So he told me the idea, and I was like, cool. And they had done like a first issue. So I was like, can you send me the first issue? They had scripted the first issue. So I was like, can you send me the script? And can you send me a description of the character's powers? 2 weeks later, hey, can you send me a script and a description of the character's powers? 2 months later, and it just went on like that, right?
Right.
I eventually just wrote, because I was like, oh, this is fun. I just wrote characters, like supporting characters based on just a little bit he told me. And he really liked that. But as things went on, it became clear that he did not know his character's powers. Oh. But he would get threatened if I tried to define them. So he, I think he just, I don't know. I think there was just a lot of ego attached to it, right? Like he knew that he wanted to create something, but he couldn't. He wasn't an able writer and he wasn't an able artist. So he sort of tried to micromanage me and the artist. Yeah. And it got to be frustrating. So I left. We put out one really substandard book. But the artist had been working with them, that person for, I think like 5 or 6 years. And I told the artist, look, man, I'm gonna leave. And the artist was like, hey, man, I've been trying to get this out for like 6 years. Can you at least stay till we get the one issue out? And I was like, okay. So I stayed, then I bounced, and then the artist followed me onto new stuff. And that was Dion.
Oh, sweet.
Yes, who drew the Burning Metronome. Yeah.
Love Dion.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man.
He is.
So, so Dion followed me. I tried to do something called Spotless. Dion's very talented. He does have difficulty with finishing things. So that didn't go very well. But then...
I know how that is.
Yeah. We met at Scorpio Steele, who's another great comics artist, at his birthday party. Dion and I met Matt Strackbine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that guy's a designer in Longmont. He designed the Olympic ski team's uniforms for like 9 years.
Fuck, that's awesome.
Right. And he and I got to talking, and he is like me. Like if he says he's gonna do it.
Right.
Like me and him put up the Burning Metronome website in a night. That dude's dope. He's the best creative collaboration I've ever had because he is talented and motivated. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just you touched up on Burning Metronome.
Yeah.
Can you tell the viewers what that is?
Oh yeah. So, when we met Matt, me, Dion, and Matt talked about working on something, and that something became the Burning Metronome. So that is a graphic novel that I put out in 2017, like August 2017. It's kind of Twilight Zone meets Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
And here's the one sentence pitch for it. 6 courageous explorers find themselves trapped in a world where they encounter the strangest creatures they've ever seen. Human beings. What?
That's pretty fucking weird.
That's pretty much
from that.
Right.
I know him.
Yeah, so we did that. I wrote it. Dion drew it, and Matt did all the coloring and lettering. And we did a Kickstarter for it. People were tremendously supportive, and that book has changed my life. Like, I quit insurance right before I wrote it, and then I had a little money saved up to see if I could try to make something as a writer.
Yeah.
And so I put that book out, and then I started speaking at high schools for free. I wrote most of it in Mutiny, in fact, and Mutiny was the first place to carry it. Nice. So shout out to Mutiny.
Yes, Mutiny Cafe.
Right. Yeah. So that book has led to me getting a literary agent. It's led to me becoming a professor of writing for the master's program at Regis. Like, it just led to all of these really crazy things that I never would have imagined. If you would have told me a comic book would have made me a professor back when I was going to those conventions when I was a kid, I never would have believed it.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely sweet and endearing. I love it.
Thanks. I feel like I just talked for a long time, so I'm giving space for you now.
Oh no, that's fine. If the guest just takes the rein, runs with it, I'll let him ride.
Okay.
Yeah. So with Burning Metronome, it, the reference to Twilight Zone. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, there's that outer limits feel to it, which is, I mean, that's not a, too far of a, toss between, the two, those two platforms. But, I mean, there's those elements of, sci-fi, the social commentary that ties into it,
mm,
and the horror aspects you know, that tie into that as well. Um, you know, the fact that that you've gotten the response that you've had, what was that the project that got you gigs with, because you've done some stuff with Zenoscope, some other, and other public,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Kinda, I guess. So, I mean, what the Burning Metronome did for me was take me from being a dude with an idea
Uh-huh.
to being a dude with a book, so I could actually show people what it is that I was capable of.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think that went a long way. As far as Zenoscope, there is Norrin Rad from Nerd Team 30.
Oh yeah.
He and I went, yeah. So he and I went to Phoenix Comic Con together in 2018, and he introduced me to the editor there. And I gave that dude a copy of the Burning Metronome. We had a good conversation. He's a cool guy,
Nice.
Dave Franchini. Um, then I saw him again at New York Comic Con and San Diego, and I don't think he was at Denver. But I saw him at all these conventions, like, hey man, remember me? Like that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then at San Diego in 2018, he was like, hey, yeah, I'm definitely gonna hire you for some stuff. And then I emailed him once a month for the next year and never heard anything. And then I saw him at San Diego in 2019. No, I'm getting this confused. Because, no, I saw him in San Diego 2019. Yes.
Sounds
And
like
he
you're
was like, that
thorough,
was it.
consistent.
Yeah. And he was like, he saw me. He was like, yo, I got 2 stories for you right now.
Oh shit. That's
Because
awesome.
one of the things, one of the things is that those guys are getting like hundreds of submissions a day sometimes, like just a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So even if they intend to do something, they're just overwhelmed. They're doing a lot.
Yeah.
So he gave me 2, and so I wrote a short story for the Grimm Fairy Tales holiday specials, one for Halloween and one for like November, so maybe Thanksgiving special. And it's part of their horror
Nothing's come
anthology.
alive, right?
Right. So so that was cool. That was very cool. That was definitely my first nationally distributed horror story.
Cool.
Yeah, so but really just doing a thing,
Yeah.
creating a thing is what led to me even being able to talk to him, right? Because if I didn't have anything and I
Right.
went over, it'd just be like, oh, I'm just another dude who says, you got to believe me, I can write a story, sir.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also, it's one thing to walk up with like a black and white printed out script, um, or even prior to that, like a pitch, but
Uh,
it's something else completely to come prepared with an artifact that you have completely finished, and you have produced with your collaborators and your co-conspirators. Um, but I think that speaks so much more volumes than just coming up with, here's a script, or
yeah,
here's a pitch idea, or here's an outline. I think that is probably something that publishers and other creative uh, platforms want to see.
yeah. I think it's. I mean, there's no reason to not do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're an editor of a magazine, for example, okay, so we've all read comics where suddenly the artist we love disappears, and then we're
Right.
like, why did they have this mediocre artist? And you know why? It's because the mediocre artists will hit their deadlines, right? So if you're an editor and it's your job to make sure the magazine gets out, and you have a brilliant artist who might hit the deadlines, you have an okay artist who will definitely hit their deadlines, you're going
Right.
to hire the okay artist,
Right.
So if you come in showing that you can create something and keep up with it, already
Right.
you're set apart from the pack.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I think that's something that creatives need to kind of definitely meditate on, and
Yeah.
then apply that hard work. Um, Now, recently, in fact, this week, you just completed a successful Kickstarter campaign on a brand
Yeah.
new project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that one is called Anguish Garden. It's a sort of futuristic Western set in the aftermath of an alien war. Ultimately, it's an allegory for leaving white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a really exciting team working on that one. So I'm writing it. And then Kevin Karen is doing layouts.
Awesome. Love Karen.
Yeah, that dude's one. Yes, he likes being called Karen.
Yeah, I'm
He's
gonna call him Karen. Yeah.
he's one of the best layout men in the business, in my opinion. Like he just does he stages things really beautifully.
Cool.
And then it was important to me that since it's the main character is a girl, she's like 17, that I have women involved in the production of it. And while I was writing it, I was imagining Dalen Ogden's art.
Oh, cool.
And she and I had worked together on some pop culture classroom comics. We did one about Red Rocks. And then she drew a chapter of the second Burning Metronome, which is not out yet. And so, so I talked to her. I pitched it to Kevin. He was down. I pitched it to Dale, and she was down.
Nice.
And then for colors, I was imagining Sarah Menzel. She and I tabled beside each other at AnomalyCon maybe 3 years ago. And I really loved her art, but especially what she did with colors. And so she's married now, so she's Sarah Menzel Trappel. And we met, and she read the script, and she loved it. So that's the team, and they are really doing so we did 7 sample pages to see how everybody would work together, and those are free online. And I love them. I love the work that everybody's doing. I'm so excited about it. And so I was doing a Kickstarter so that I could afford to pay all 3 of them and pay for the publishing of the book. And it's actually still going till April 1st.
Nice. Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Nice.
So we reached our $16,000 goal yesterday or the day before.
Okay, cool. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
When we post that, send me the link again to the Kickstarter so we can repost it. That way you guys get a tip, right? That's how it works.
That is how that works.
And then, are you guys doing any stretch goals to reach any extra milestones?
I have planned to, man, but I guess I'm trying to be sensitive to people's during this whole coronavirus stuff, people's reduction in income, and it just feels a little shilly for me to be like, hey, I'll throw in an extra print, if you guys but if you want to support it and you have the means, it would be wonderful.
Right. Well, and I think, granted, you still got to go through all the print process. I don't know. Are you done with the production end?
My script is done, but the drawing is just beginning.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All
right. So it won't be out until maybe August or so.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say it's just hey, contribute to this because that way you have reading material while you're dealing with this. Hopefully, we won't be in this, muck, past, the next several weeks. But every day we keep hearing new timelines and
it's true.
New information and stuff. Right now we've got the best model we have, I think, is China. And
Italy too.
What's that?
Oh, in Italy.
Well, and that's the model we're kind of following, not by choice.
Right.
And we've got, some friends up there. You mentioned, Charlie. Charlie and his wife Amy are have been quarantined for at least a month in Italy.
Yeah.
From the posts, I see they're making the most of it.
Yeah.
he at least brought his ukulele, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm glad Charlie was prepared.
Yeah, he always seems to be like one of those guys that no matter how dire the situation, he's always going to have a smile and want to joke and kind of cheer you up.
That's definitely true of Charlie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so in the midst of all of that happening, I'm really happy with the fact that people still uh, felt that what I was doing artistically was important enough to give support to it. Because I really didn't know. I was like, we were down to that last 1,000, and I was like, man, I don't know if people are gonna be able to do it.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I think I saw a post just before you said, "Hey, we're successful." Like you were down to the last 100 or so bucks.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, it's like, yeah, it's. I thought at that point, like, crap, is this thing already done? I'm glad it's not.
Yeah.
That you.
Yeah, I purposely picked a 60-day campaign because it was more money than I had ever raised before. So I was, wanted to give time for it to happen.
Right. Now that those things can be, nail biting.
Right.
I've been involved in a number of those campaigns, and at least half of them have failed, and the other half, they're successful.
Right.
Usually we're trying to get like modest, funds. A lot of time, you learn some great and sometimes some hard lessons.
Yeah, it's true.
But
yeah, people sometimes, and I'm not saying this of you, I'm just saying I've noticed with some people that they kind of think that crowdfunding is magical,
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you got to earn that money. Like it's contacting, it's reminding people, it's writing people directly,
Yep. It's knocking on doors, and sometimes you've got Guido with the one eye and the big stick with the special at the end of it.
Yeah.
To remind them, it's like, hey, remember that favor you owe me?
Right.
I've come
I
to
will
get
say that is the benefit of having worked in insurance. Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
yeah, I only lived off of what I was able to sell. So bringing skills into being an artist has been really helpful for me.
Oh, that's good that you have that background, and
Yeah.
you can kind of do that salesman pitch and just when that door's closing, you kick your foot into it.
All right. Do you need some insurance? I think you need insurance.
I think you're going to need insurance here in a minute.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, going back to like, your childhood and your influences, getting into comics, Flash was a big thing. It sounded like you were into Star Trek and of course Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
What else like really, kind of propelled you, to do some of that creative writing? Like what were you a big fan of, that you would just geek out on?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, like, because I have been content to be a fan with that stuff for most of my life because, I didn't really start writing until 4 years ago or whatever. But definitely Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all the big things, Star Trek, Star Wars. When I was maybe 6 or 7, I was getting all of those DC Who's books.
Oh.
Yeah, so I learned.
Yeah, those are awesome.
I just learned all of these obscure characters from DC, so that those characters have a really kind of special place in my heart.
Okay.
And then when I was maybe 10, my mom was like, I can buy you subscriptions to 2 comics. So pick 2 comics and you can get subscriptions. And it was back when Marvel used to handle its own subscription and they would send it to you.
Yeah.
So I picked 2 team books, and I think my 10-year-old thinking was I get more superheroes for that amount.
Right.
So I picked Avengers and Defenders.
Oh, wow. Defenders. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, and I didn't even know who they were. I was just like, it's a team. I'm going to get a whole bunch, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it was Defenders during a time when there was a Moondragon, Iceman, and Beast were part of the Defenders.
Okay, I remember.
Yeah, and Iceman was in love with the character named Cloud, who was a sentient cumulus cloud, and
What the fuck? That's awesome. That
yeah,
is
and
so abstract.
but the cool thing was that Cloud could take human form,
Okay.
but would shift from male to female because it was all the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so Moondragon was in love with Cloud as a man, and Iceman was in love with Cloud as a woman. So it created this crazy love triangle.
That's, man, you imagine that threesome? That is
Right.
that would be damp. A cloud is water vapor, attached to dust particles.
Yeah, scientifically accurate.
That's hilarious. I was gonna say, it's like, was this the time when Ghost Rider was a part of Defenders? But maybe that was later.
No, yeah, this was been like mid '80s.
Mid '80s.
So yeah. So I mean, I think just kind of what back then, geek stuff was not mainstream like it is now. I love that it's mainstream. I'm enjoying seeing it, but it was more of a search to find it, right? So
Right.
yeah, so like, I would have to like wait till the Twilight Zone marathon and try to find it, or and I watched some really terrible things just because I wanted to see some geek stuff. I watched My Secret Identity. You remember that show?
Okay.
Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah. When he was like a teenager, just past Stand By Me years.
Yep, and he would he used to fly using aerosol cans. Like he could
Is that how he flew on that show?
He could reduce his mass, so he would start floating, and then he would use aerosol cans to go forward.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Okay, that's pretty.
It's a cool idea, but it was a terrible show. Cool idea, terrible show. Sliders was a better show for him.
I also vaguely remember Sliders. I was never a show that I got into. I tried watching it recently, and I think that might be one that didn't hold up.
It's not much must watch. It's not that.
Yeah, because I think that was that came out several years after like the first few seasons of X-Files or something.
Oh yeah,
Which that was a show I was really, really into.
Oh, do you remember the Incredible Hulk TV movies?
Yep, I grew up.
Yeah, that was a terrible, and there was a terrible version of Thor, terrible version of Daredevil, terrible version of Kingpin.
Chameleon, yeah. Terrible version of Fisk. Actually, that was like one of the better, parts of that Daredevil, Incredible Hulk movie.
Just some dude in shades. I'm Kingpin.
Right. Well, and then when like season 1 of Daredevil on Netflix came out, and he had that nearly dark costume.
Oh yeah, I look very much like that.
Yeah, I was like, I know it's supposed to be, kind of refer to the, those
Frank Miller
comics, but it's just like, but you still got this blemish of a movie, that I grew up with, that I can't help but, kind of, keep referencing. So that kind of fucked with me a little bit.
Right. I like Doctor Who back then. It's just all that stuff,
Yeah.
I even watched Misfits of Science. Do you remember that? That was Courtney Cox.
I remember the title, but I don't remember the show.
It was not great. I watched the Superboy TV show, and that was not great.
That. Yeah.
They fired Superboy in the first season. They fired everybody and only kept Lana Lang. So there's just a new Superboy second season.
Recast everything.
Yeah.
Second season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going back to like those days, like, yeah, you're right. It's not like today where everything's at the drop of a hat. Everything's here. It's available. You don't have to do much looking.
Right.
Which is great. It's a nice convenience now. But back then, like, part of the thrill was that hunt, was looking for that thing that you would next be really into, whether it was a comic book, a TV show, a movie. I think, during my adolescence, like records and CDs, and when I was in art school, finding these obscure bands, and punk bands and stuff. And it's just like, wow, what is this? I don't know, but the album art's fucking cool.
Right.
Now I still do that. online, I'm searching for, obscure band that's local to like one city that I'm just not familiar with, and then
Uh-huh.
kind of falling in love with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that you still find yourself doing, looking for that next thing.
Um, yeah, sort of. I mean, I certainly, you're right. It's a lot more available now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't require as much digging, but I find myself being so thrilled at the amount of good things and the accessibility of them,
Right.
because I spent so many years of my young life in a comic book store talking with people like, if only they took the characters seriously, this would be a great movie, right?
Yeah.
And now they do, and they're great movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm just really enjoying it. I'm enjoying seeing how all of these things are coming into fruition. I'm sure that it'll go out again. Like sci-fi was really big in the 60s in terms of TV shows and movies, and then it went out. So, maybe it'll go out again. It's fine. But certainly all the things that I enjoyed as a kid are the world has learned to enjoy them.
Yeah.
It's funny. I tend to think it's because of the OC. Do you remember that show?
I remember that.
I never watched it.
I've never watched it. I've maybe seen a total of like 10 minutes throughout the whole.
Okay. Well, there was a character on there who was a comic book fan.
Yeah.
And so, but he was cool. And it was the first time, like in mainstream media, that there was a cool character who was a comic book fan.
Was it that Adam Brody? Was that the actor?
Yeah. Yeah, it was that guy.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of opened up that, because people would come to me and be like, you should watch the OC. There's a comic book fan on there, and I'd be like, I'm still not going to watch the OC. But, but yeah, that's my theory, is that was the beginning of it sort of cracking open into mainstream.
That's pretty cool. I wouldn't have thought of that. Nor would I have made that connection. You had like shows later that came out, like Big Bang Theory. But
yeah.
I think after a while you started realizing that it's not so much in support of, but more still making fun of that culture.
Yeah.
I think, after like several seasons, I mean, and I watched a lot of those.
Oh, okay.
It's just like, this really, it's the same.
It felt empty.
Yeah, it was kind of empty calorie. And I recently saw like a video essay on it, talking about, it's like, the joke was, usually would have like geek and, science references.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, it was just using that as a mechanism instead of like, something in support of. So yeah, it was really interesting to kind of hear. I'm not selling that very well, but
no, it sounds enthralling.
I know. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just, kind of had that empty calorie, feel to it. So with Anguish Garden, I remember, searching around on Instagram, as I notoriously do. And you had posted something about your new project, and then seeing somebody was posting something spiteful to my friend Alan Brooks. And I was like, what the fuck? How can anybody do that to such a cool guy creating such fantastic art in allegory for something that is very prevalent, in our society. More obvious. It's always been there, but more noticeable, I think, in recent years. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no. So the Colorado Sun, who I write a weekly comic for, called What I Miss. It's free. You can check it out. They did an interview with me about Anguish Garden. And the headline said something like, cartoonist tackles white supremacy with graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And they posted it on Christmas Eve. And so I reposted it. And on Christmas Day, some dude was sending me death threats And I was like, man, go open a present, motherfucker. Like, what are you doing? You know? Uh, and it was he's a comic skater, and that's a whole thing that for people who don't know can Google. But basically, it was all like all comics artists deserve to die, and don't worry, I'll be there to piss on your grave, and I'll make sure when the coming Civil War happens, guess who I'm coming after, like that kind of stuff.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I was like, this is for something that isn't even out yet, you know?
Yeah.
And also, I think, it's telling that a headline against white supremacy makes you feel like you have to, like if you're defending white supremacy, you're not really in a very good position.
Right.
But I will say, honestly, it was surprising. I've done other things, written other things that I thought might have garnered some kind of reaction like that, and really I haven't gotten that. So it surprised me that something that isn't even out yet, without somebody threatening to murder me. So it was concerning because they were also posting stuff about Colorado. So they're in the state, But I'll say, like, I think the reaction of the creative community and I guess just the community at large in Denver, people are determined to help me get this book out because somebody threatened my life over it, which is, I guess, a wonderful side effect of a terrible thing.
Yeah. I think, that, and also I think people should support it just because it is a creative endeavor, and, people should support the arts. But of course, with such important messaging, I double so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think I read, I've mentioned this in other interviews, but I read this book called Rising Out of Hatred, or Rising Out of Hate, one or the other. It's about Derek Black, who has an ironic last name. He was raised as a white supremacist.
Okay.
His father, Don Black, founded the biggest white supremacy website in the world, Stormfront.
Oh,
and his godfather is David Duke.
Mm.
His mother used to date David Duke. So this kid was being raised as sort of like the next big thing in white supremacy. Right? Like, they really thought he was going to just be the face of the movement in a really new way. When he was 11, he taught himself how to program, how to code. And so he programmed a kid's corner on the white supremacy website.
Ooh.
Yeah. And when he was 14, he was thinking about it, and he came up to his dad and he was like, Dad, we need to rebrand. We need to stop focusing, like, for the public, we need to stop talking about who we hate, and we need to focus on how we're being hurt. He came up with the term white genocide.
Ugh.
Yeah. So basically what happened was his parents wanted to make him sort of the legitimate face of the movement. So they sent him to college so he could get degrees. And when he went to college, it was the first time he was face to face with the people that he had been taught to hate.
Right. Okay.
And so essentially over a period of 4 years, he came out of the white supremacist movement. And when he announced that he was renouncing it, he started getting death threats.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me in that story was that his focus actually was not on the people he was supposed to hate. It was more like, I am saving my family. I am preserving our culture. And he actually, in a way, thought he was doing something good.
Right.
And then when he had to be face to face with the humanity of the people that were affected by the things he said, he started to shift. And so for Anguish Garden, I thought, like, what would it be like for somebody to think that they are the hero in a story?
Yeah.
And then slowly realize that they are doing the most evil shit ever.
Right. Right. And I think it's a common thing with, I think, most villains in in fiction too, where they think they're doing this noble thing to preserve or to help or to do whatever. Everybody else looks at them as the villain. Good example, Darth Vader.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anakin thought he was doing something noble. He needed order in the cosmos and in the galaxy,
Right.
and he was willing to do whatever it took to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Palpatine was just kind of manipulating him the whole way.
Yeah. And I think that's a real thing, like that we have to face in our own lives, right? Like people can take our good intentions and steer us towards undestructive paths.
Right.
I was thinking about how midterm elections last year, there were a lot of Republicans, politicians specifically, who were talking about the evil caravans that were coming from South America.
Oh, yeah.
And how they were going to destroy us and how they were robbers and murderers and rapists. And these caravans are coming, right? And so sincere people on the right, like sincere conservative people, were concerned for their families.
Right.
But this lie of the caravans caused them to vote out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the midterms were over, no mention of the caravans. Where'd they go? You know? And so I'm saying even people who intend to do something good, if you can appeal to their love of family, their need to protect their children, their parents, etc., and people can use that to lead you into evil.
Right. They in turn end up in that instance voting against their interest, leaving themselves wide open. I mean, look at the situation that we're in right now.
Right.
And then, turning them into unintentional racists or bigots, xenophobes, and, kind of fascistic. I've had those experiences online where, and it's fruitless, that you get those trolling debates.
Right.
And it's like, oh, these guys are coming, for your kids. It was like, dude, they're not. They're, you can explain to them no matter what, but they have adhered themselves and learned, and the lie so well, it's ingrained.
Yeah.
And at that point, you either need to start looking at some level of deprogramming, I guess, or I mean, it's very sad, unfortunately, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any easy solution to it, but I can say, even like in the case of Derek Black, when he had to face the humanity of these people, that is what brought him, because he wasn't racism was not the draw to him for being a white supremacist. Protecting his family was.
Yeah.
And then when he met other human beings, he thought, oh, their families need to be protected too, and it brought him out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like the people who are who racism is the goal, they're going to be in the extreme. They're going to be your David Dukes. They're going to be your Don Blacks. They're the people who are way on the other extreme. But the way that they can pull people in who are not as extreme as them is by creating a common enemy and denying another group's humanity. Because then all you see is the enemy, right?
Right.
So I think art has a very powerful way of being able to show the humanity of a group that you're not a part of. Like I'm not going to live as a trans man, right? But if I read a story that is written by someone who has had that experience, then suddenly I can understand their experience better.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I try to do with art is show the humanity of different groups.
Kind of hold up that mirror, people. It's like, what can you showing, a little bit of themselves in what you're trying to convey. So
yeah, that's definitely the Rod Serling lesson, the guy from Twilight Zone, the guy who created Twilight Zone.
Yep.
Like he got censored. Before he came out with Twilight Zone, he was just writing on television for 12 years. And he wanted to write about the Emmett Till murder. He wanted to write about racism, war, sexism, constantly getting censored. And when he got censored, he would go to the news and be like, I wanted to write about Emmett Till, but they censored me. Yeah. So they called him the angry young man of television. So for 12 years, he fought that battle. And then eventually he decided, if I encase these things in fantasy and sci-fi, I can probably get these messages out. He was not a fan of sci-fi.
Yeah.
So he sat down with Ray Bradbury. How do I write sci-fi?
Oh.
And yeah, right. And
Oh,
so,
I didn't know this story. That's great.
right. So that's how the Twilight Zone became what it is. And he said afterwards, so he was on the Mike Wallace show, talk show, maybe like uh, a month before Twilight Zone goes on the air. It's on
Yeah.
YouTube. And Mike Wallace is like, so you're doing some kind of fantasy thing now, right? And Rod Turner's like, yeah. And Mike Wallace is like, so you're not doing any more serious television? And very condescending.
Mhm.
And Rod Turner's like, well, yeah, it's still serious, but I'm taking a different route. So, but he was basically hiding the fact that he was using the Twilight Zone to get his messages out.
Yeah.
And then once it was out, he said that he found that he could, if he wrote about Republicans and Democrats, he got censored. If he wrote
Mhm.
about Martians, he didn't.
Right.
So I think when you can take something out of its emotional context, then human beings can hear it. Like, if I say you are racist, like, even if you are, it's hard to hear, right?
Right.
But if you pull it out of context, there are two guys, this happened, and that was kind of a racist thing, then a person can be like, oh, wait, do I do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a much more peaceful way to be able to reach someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Strength and allegory.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to some degree too, like you can find that um, in like genres like horror as well.
Yeah.
So and like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and even like Burning Metronome. I mean, it has
That's
those.
good company. Thanks.
Yeah, it's there's those elements of horror because you see things escalate, and in the I think the most horrific things is what can happen in the real world, even if it's allegory,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be a reflection. I remember like back during the Iraq War, you started seeing this resurgence in like horror films,
Mm.
and not necessarily my most favorite genre of horror movies, but there was the
Okay.
torture porn that was starting to come out in the U.S.
Right.
It was really made famous from like South Korea and Japan,
Mm-hmm.
which they did really well. But the the bubble wrap that they put it in here for the U.S. was a bit of a reflection on some of the social commentary that's going on in war, whether it's Saw or Hostel. Like Hostel, I mean, you had human trafficking and all this stuff, stuff that we turn a blind eye to, but has been, for the last, 15 years or so, been really brought to national attention.
Right.
You had no idea that this level of like black market slavery still exists,
Right.
and and the sex trafficking and all this. I mean, that's what I got from films like that. They're disgusting as hell and gross as fuck, and I prefer like horror comedies, but there is that level of messaging in some of these films and projects, and now
Right.
you see more sophisticated, especially when it goes to long form TV series. They've
Uh-huh.
they've got that platform to really be able to develop the characters and convey those messages.
Right.
So it's really I think it's that much more engrossing, and that much more reflections. Like, see this guy might be some kind of like chimera or monster, but this really does exist. And
Mm-hmm.
if this way, I think you're right. If we can package it this way, then people are a little bit easier to absorb that messaging, and hopefully can apply it to their life maybe.
Yeah. There was a girl I used to date who read The Burning Metronome, and she was like, comic books ain't supposed to be making me think about my life, And I was like, oh, mission accomplished,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Escapism doesn't have to be purely escapism. It
Yeah.
can have substance.
Yeah, I think good art does not have to have a message particularly, but I think if you engage people with the things that matter in their lives
Yeah.
and it's entertaining, then I think that's the stuff that people like go back to the most. You know, that's the stuff people love the most.
Yeah.
It gives them a new way, a new perspective on their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. Oh, hey, Alan, I think we have to start wrapping up, but where can people, find you and find your work, the Burning Metronome,
Yeah.
and you're soon to be. I mean, we'll post the Kickstarter. We'll
Yes.
load up this really so live video.
So live.
It'll be in the past.
Live.
Yeah, we're live. Yes. Does this always mean we're live?
3D.
We're coming at you. Fuck you, Cameron.
Okay, so I host a podcast called Motherfucker in the Cape,
Yes.
which is on iTunes and Spotify. I write a weekly comic for the Colorado Sun. It's called What I Miss. That is on coloradosun.com. There are no paywalls or ads, so you can read that for free. The Burning Metronome, you can read a little. There's a free story there at theburningmetronome.com. If you're out of town, it's digitally. You can get it on Comixology, or you can get it from the Tattered Cover bookstore. Or if you're in town, you can get it from like Mutiny or just other bookstores around town. Anguish Garden, I'm looking at, obviously that's on Kickstarter, but if you go to the Kickstarter, you can read a free 7-page preview of it. So you get a sense of what the book is about and what the art is going to look like. Because I'm really, really excited about this art. And so that's on Kickstarter. I teach at Regis, but who knows when I'll be back there. I'm starting to teach comics at Lighthouse Writers Workshop.
Oh, cool.
So I think some of that will be on Zoom like this is for right now. My agent is pitching another book. Once things calm down, he'll start pitching it. But that's exciting. And I wrote a movie
That's right.
that we just got a verbal commitment for somebody to finance. So.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. So that'll once things settle down, it'll film in Atlanta.
Nice.
So I think that's all the stuff. Yeah, that's all the stuff. Yeah.
Geez, you sound like a really boring person.
I have problems with being motivated.
Alan, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for talking about your projects and everything. And can't wait to have you on again when you talk about your movie. And
right.
And when Anguish Gardens comes out. Thanks again. So for everybody out there in the world that's social and hopefully just physically distancing themselves, self-quarantining, whatever you might be doing. Hopefully, you'll find this pretty fun, entertaining. Go find Alan's stuff. Go partake in his stories, and because you got a little time now.
Right.
And make sure you look out for each other. Be considerate. There are people that are susceptible to this virus, whether it's their age or their immunity isn't to snuff. So please just stay away. Send well wishes. Connect with each other on social media as much as you can. Stream cool fucking horror movies and a shit ton of the Twilight Zone.
Right.
How many seasons is there?
5.
5
Yep.
seasons. So get going.
Right.
Those lessons that Rod was wanting to put out and share and enrich all of us. So with that, COFOH Live and Undead, it's in support of the Colorado Festival of Horror. Our event is not October, September 11th through the 13th. You know, it's far enough out that we're not canceling. Yeah, we're not canceling. We're working for it. When we come out of this, you got to have something to go and do. And we hope that you go and do us. That sounds bad. It intentionally sounds bad.
I think it's a perfect note to end things on.
That's right. So feel free to visit us at cofohorror.com. You know, shout out to our friends, Mutiny Information Cafe.
Yep.
You open up soon, because that's Alan and my home away from home. And
Definitely.
The coffee I brew is nothing compared to what they brew. So please, let's get through this. All right. Thanks again, Alan. You have a good night. And
You too.
I'm ending this recording.